Hey, this is Meredith. So on Friday, we released an episode with a really wonderful interview with Helen Smallbone. If you've seen the movie Unsung Hero, or maybe you've seen about it on social media or heard about it, in theaters now, Unsung Hero is the backstory of the Smallbone family. Helen and her husband David, their kids, which include Joel and Luke Smallbone of For King and Country and Rebecca St. James, the early years of their family walking through a really difficult circumstance that built their faith in a very powerful way. Well, since we got to hear Helen's story on the episode released on Friday, we thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to hear David Smallbone's perspective? So that's what we get to share with you today. By the way, if you haven't seen the movie and you'd like to, unsunghero.movie to find out where it's showing near you.
Seeing his hands and feet, the church loving on us, putting food on the table, it changed me. It moved me from lukewarm to passionate.
God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
This is Dave Smallbone. I'm the father of For King Country and also Rebecca St. James, and I've been asked to share with you my story. I come from Australia, moved over here 32 years ago from Brisbane, Australia to Nashville, Tennessee. And the reason we moved is I'd done a tour 34 years ago in Australia with a big Christian artist. And on that tour, lost everything. And I went to my wife, Helen, and I said, hey, baby, I think the only way we can get ahead is to go to America. And she said, we'll go for 2 years. And 32 years later, we are still here. But my journey, I grew up in a Christian family, had wonderful parents. I worked for a mainstream television station when I was about 18. They let me go when I was 19, then went to work for a book publisher, did that for a couple of years, and then went to work for a mainstream record label. During that time, I was involved with a lot of mainstream acts in Australia, but I also helped sign a Christian artist by the name of Family. That was around 50 years ago. And so they had a gold album in Australia, and I was involved in managing them. I did that for about 5 years and then went to work for a pop radio station. But out of that, I realized that I wanted to be involved in something purposeful. So at 27, I started down the road of building a company that did Christian concerts in Australia, but it was also a record label as well. I worked at that for about 5 years, and then I went out, started my own label and own promotions company, and toured just about every act that there is in Christian music down under. And it's hard in Australia because Australia is post-Christian. But we toured Petra, Whiteheart, Stryper, Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Leon Patello, David Meese. The list goes on. And then 34 years ago, it was the late 80s, I did a big tour. And that's, as I mentioned previously, I lost everything. And that set us on a new path. My mother-in-law wanted me to get into real estate, and I thought, oh, no, I can't do that. And I went to Helen and I said, I think the only way we can get ahead is to go to America. She said we'd go for 2 years, and blow me down, 32 years later, we're still here. I came over to work for somebody. He let me go after 2 months. At the time, we had a house with no furniture, didn't have a car. It was the most challenging time of my life. But what happened is the artist I'd come over to work with introduced us to his local church, People's Church now, Church of the City in Franklin, Tennessee. That church loved on us. It was very hard for me to get work in the industry, but we did all the things Americans don't necessarily like doing. Mowing lawn, cleaning houses, and it was an incredible, incredible experience. Our family learnt how to work together. A year into our stay here in America, we were to sign a deal for my daughter, Rebecca St. James, with Word Records. On the day we were to sign that deal, they decided they didn't want to go ahead with it. And it was a a very hard time for Helen and I. It was difficult for us to get out of bed the next day. But a gentleman from our church came to us and said, hey, I want to give you the advance that we're supposed to get from the record label. I want to give that to you. And it was $10,000. And my self-worth at that time was at an all-time low. And I had to give him something back. So what I gave him, I said to him, hey, John, why don't you take half of Rebecca's publishing, which didn't mean anything at the time. He said, okay, I'll take it. Over the next 10 years, that made him something like $250,000 to $300,000. And it's just my best example of God's economy. He then went on to be a missionary in the Ukraine. He was over there for 10 years. And that funding that came from half of Rebecca's publishing helped him do that mission work. It was really something quite extraordinary. A year after that, we were able to sign a deal with Eddie DeGamo, and that's when Rebecca's career started. And as a family, with her ministry, we were able to travel the world sharing the hope in Jesus. It was really quite an extraordinary time, just like we'd seen during our first 2 years in America living in poverty. We saw the miraculous all around the world. We went to every state in America, traveled to Russia, to Romania. But during that time, our sons, we've got 5 boys, they were Rebecca's crew. And 2 of those crew members were Joel and Luke Smallbone, who went on to become for King and Country. And so they did their apprenticeship working as the crew for Rebecca. So when their career started 12 years ago, they had done their 10,000 hours. What I can say to you as a family, we've been allowed to live in the miraculous. And the movie that has just come out, Unsung Hero, tracks our story. It talks about living in poverty, how it was difficult for me, how Helen loved on me when I was feeling like a failure. And I think my message to any of the ladies listening is if your husband is going through a hard time, remember how important it is to be encouraging, because had Helen not been encouraging to me at that time, I would have had a nervous breakdown. But I think, looking back, I think the Lord put me through all this to grow me. I was like a spoiled rich kid. I had wonderful parents, wonderful life, but took it all for granted and was lukewarm about Jesus. And then seeing his hands and feet, the church loving on us, putting food on the table, it changed me. It moved me from lukewarm to passionate. And so to any of you who are listening to this today, my encouragement is to go deeper with Jesus. Don't take as long as I did. It really took me until 42, 43 for me to get serious. And I look back now, I'm 74. I've just had a wonderful life. I've been allowed to be involved in the ministry. A lot of us men, take our responsibility of being the breadwinner maybe too seriously. My 2 pieces of encouragement are go deeper in Jesus and prioritize your family. We traveled the world with our family, and it ended up being a beautiful time, and we're close even to this day. This story is documented in a movie now. It's just been released. It's called Unsung Hero. If you need encouragement at this time, even encouragement to go deeper with Jesus or encouragement to love on your family, go and see the movie. And if you have somebody who is struggling in life and needs to be reminded about a different way to live, I would encourage you to encourage them to go and see Unsung Hero. My sons produced it and directed it. I had nothing to do with it. I'm a strong-willed guy. I stayed away from it. But my role now is to encourage people to see that movie because I believe it is a strong evangelistic moment. It's an honor for me to speak to you today. Godspeed. Go deeper with Jesus. Go deeper with family. And if you get a chance, see Unsung Hero. All the best. Godspeed.
The Unfolding is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.